is going to be a great day as we are talking about making headway. And last week I talked a lot about how we need to dream. And today I want to talk about our future. And a part of that, dreaming about our future and thinking about our future. And when we think about our future, it's amazing when we make decisions. If we're thinking about our future, it affects our decisions of today, right? Money is a great example. If you are thinking about your future and you want to purchase a car or something, or you have to save up some money, but if you go and spend it on candy the week before, you can't buy. You know what I'm talking about? We have to think about our future. And when we think about our future, we have to plan. We have to dream. We have to dream about our future, think about our future. And I think one of the things that comes against dreaming about our future is discouragement. And so I want to talk about that today. How to conquer discouragement when we're thinking about our future, when we're thinking about our dreams. And one of the things I think that we struggle a lot of times is discouragement. When have things gone wrong? Oh my gracious, were you here in 2020? Have things come against you? Have you had difficulties? Have you had the crazy flu? Have you had the COVID? All these things comes again. There's so many things that cause discouragement in our lives. And so I want us to talk about that. And we have a great example today in Nehemiah. And I want us to take and talk about discouragement. And I think it is. Discouragement is a dream killer. It is a dream. It stops you from dreaming about the future. Stops you from thinking about what God has planned for your life and puts your eyes on the problem right now. Right? So I know when things are all a mess and kind of conflicty in our life. That's a new word, conflicty. We could write that down. Everything's kind of conflicty in your life. Your eyes are on it. Right? When there's pain, your eyes are on that pain in front of you, and we immediately get distracted about our future and about our dreaming. And so I want us to look at this today, and it's easy to start something. I am the worst at this. Have you ever started something and then you get about halfway and then you're like, oh, I'll let that sit there for a while. And then you go start a new project? Have you ever done that? Oh my gracious. You have done that. Everybody can say, yeah, you've done this. Very few people do not do that. Yeah, I'm probably the worst at that. I'll get started on something and then I'll need some extra supplies or something, so I'll stop that because I don't have those supplies, and I'll go work on this project. And now as I'm working on that project, I'm done there, so I got to go work over here, and then next thing you know, it's time for dinner. And it just seems like that happens a lot in my life. But it's easy to start something. It's easy to sign up. But it is way far more difficult to finish the project. It's way more difficult. And the same thing is, as we look at our future, as we look at our dreams, we have to be careful. Because we don't want discouragement to kill our dream. You see, out of Nehemiah chapter 4 today, as we look at this, I think Nehemiah helps us to understand discouragement and how to conquer discouragement, to help us to dream again about our future, to dream again that God has His hand on your life. If there's one thing I want you to know today, before you leave this place, before you fall asleep right now, my dad used to sit right there and he'd fall asleep, so I'd say the first thing before he'd fall asleep, I want you to hear this: God has a plan for you. Right? God has a plan for you. He's not making it up today. He had that plan when you were born. He has a plan for you today. He has your future planned out. So what do I want to do? I want to be that man of God that God has called me to be. I want to be that person that God has called me to be. I want to be that person. And so we got the story here of Nehemiah. And of course, you know the story about Jerusalem. They were at war. All the walls got torn down, and it was just easy access. Before, when they had the walls around Jericho, it was a very fortress city. Very protected. You had to come through the gates. You couldn't just walk in around the backyard of Joe's house and come into the city. You had to go through it was a very fortified city, and a war is what tore it down. So Nehemiah wants to come back to Jerusalem and build the walls. Whenever I think of this, I went to England, and I did some stuff, high school assembly stuff in England, and I went into this city called Cheshire, and I was amazed. It's one of the only main walls still surrounding the city, and we walked on part of the wall, and I was like, these people made this wall with hands and carts. This is impressive. I mean, I tried to move some dirt, and I had my track hoe, and I was sick of it. You know, I mean, it's like I had friends coming over to help me moving dirt, but man, these guys made this wall. It is an amazing amount of work. It's not just this little project. It is it's impressive. So Nehemiah comes back and says, I want to rebuild the wall, the fortress around Jerusalem to make it a safe city again. Okay? So this is where he's at. So turn with me to Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 6. At last the wall was completed to half its height around the entire city, for the people had worked with enthusiasm. Wow. It's easy to start something, and it's extremely difficult to finish it. Everybody worked hard at first. Their heart was in it. The initial enthusiasm was there. And then it begins to wear off. You begin to wake up in the morning and you're sore. I remember I had all this dirt moved in our yard, and I was working on this dirt. I had not even half of it moved, and I was walking around like this. My wife was laughing at me because I would get up in the morning. I'd be like, "Oh my gracious!" And then she started giggling like that, and then I'd fake it that I didn't have any pain, and I'd be like, "Oh!" So I had to go stretch, and so I'd go around. I'd go back in the yard. I'd close the door, and I'd stretch, and I was like, "Oh, come on, body." Don't you know? Halfway through it, these people were excited, but now they're beginning to feel the pain, and now they're beginning to be discouraged. Fatigue begins to set in, and when fatigue sets in, we begin to get discouraged. Not when you're starting, but when you're in the middle of a project. You see, I think a lot of times we get into our life and we get into a situation, or we begin to walk through so many struggles. We begin to quit dreaming about our future. We simply run out of energy. We're tired. Look at verse 10 out of the same chapter. Then the people of Judah began to complain. The workers are getting tired, and there's so much rubble to be moved. We will never be able to build the wall by ourselves. Have you ever felt that way? They had worked hard, but they were physically exhausted. They were worn out. They were worn down. One of the things that causes so much discouragement in our lives is physically being worn down, and emotional being worn down, exhaustion. I'll tell you, the kids know this. Your kids know this. They know when to talk to dad. They know when to talk to moms. When you're tired and you're exhausted, can I please? Hey, Dad, I want to, whatever. And then they're willing to, they're full of energy, ready to debate the topic, and you're like, I'm exhausted. Just go. Right? When you're exhausted, when you're emotionally drained, when you're fatigued, what happens? You see, one of the things we need to look at is when we are tired, we're being set up for an attack. In Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 18, it says, when you were weary and worn out, they met you on a journey and attacked. An attack of discouragement, an attack of temptation. And that leads to self-pity. We have to ask ourselves, what am I doing? Am I physically worn out? Am I emotionally worn out? Am I finding myself in discouragement? And am I finding myself being in the middle of temptation? We have to ask ourselves, where am I being attacked right now? We must understand that fatigue makes us vulnerable. And sometimes the most thing that we fight the hardest is ourselves. Me, myself, and I. When we are tired or when we're frustrated or when things have come against us and we've been attacked, what's the first thing we do? We think of me, myself, and I. And if you watch the movie, Me, Myself, and Irene. Hopefully your name's not Irene. Me, myself, and I. That's who I fight. When I'm tired and exhausted and I have been in conflict, what is one of the first things I do? I fall into self-pity. I'll fall into temptation. I'll fall into discouragement. If you find yourself fighting a constant temptation, an addiction, you find yourself going in and out of an addiction, you find yourself fighting, I'm telling you this, you need to be energized and stop letting yourself being fatigued. Stop letting yourself being exhausted. Slow down. Some of you need a good night's sleep. My encouragement to you is this. Understand what is attacking you and how it's attacking you. And if you're finding yourself in discouragement, you're finding yourself falling into temptation, ask yourself, where am I fatigued at? Because a lot of times we feel like we can't get ahead or we just barely catch up to everything that's going around. And what does it do? It leads us into frustration. Anytime we ever tried to build something, we see here in verse 10, they have rubble. They have rubble to move. Have you ever tried cleaning out your closet? Yesterday I tried to clean out my garage. Is that frustrating? It's fun. Oh, it's just fun. I was having so much fun working in the garage, cleaning it. It goes, well, where is this? I can't find. Oh, there it is. Oh, and then, oh, yeah. Cleaning the garage. Have you ever tried to move around all that rumble and that stuff you have and that trash and this thing? I can't throw this away because I might need it. I remember one time I was helping my dad and we were cleaning out in his barn. We were getting ready to move him and he had this hose that goes to a barbecuer. And I'm like, what are you doing with this? And he goes, you never know. If you ever need a regulator, I have one. And so he grabs it and he put it in the moving truck. And we hauled it from Montana to Kelso. We put it in his garage over there. I went home to fire up my barbecuer and it didn't work. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm clicking on, and all of a sudden it's the regulator. So, I know where one is. So I went over to my dad's garage. We looked around for a little bit, opened up a couple, and there it was. I went to and that's my thought in my brain is, I can't throw that away. I might need it in 25 years. But sometimes when we're cleaning something out or trying to do something, we find ourselves that we can't seem to get ahead or we barely catch up. And we become frustrated because of sometimes the rubble in our lives, sometimes the trash that we keep around. See, in Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 10, it says, when the people of Judah began to complain, the workers were getting tired. And there was so much rubble to be moved. We will never be able to finish the build. We'll never be able to build the wall by ourselves. Rubble is a part of our lives. We cannot avoid rubble. We cannot avoid rubble in our lives. That's why it takes time to clean it out in our lives. That's why it takes time to clean and to remove rubble in our lives. If you don't deal with it, it will eventually take over. Have you ever watched one of those movies where they show the hoarders and they open up the door to the house and you're like going, oh. I remember one time, I'm going long, but I remember one time we bought this house, Ron and I bought this house in Woodinville, Washington, and it was from a hoarder. And it was on a super good deal. And we bought this house to fix up. And I was amazed. I was amazed. I mean, stuff had fallen against doors, and so we had to take the Sawzall and cut the door to get into the room to get the stuff that was completely full. And it was all garbage. And so if we don't deal with it, what do? We just start stacking it in places. If we don't deal with the rubble and the garbage in our lives, I'm telling you this, it continues to build. And after it builds for a while, it begins to really smell. It begins to destroy, it begins to rot. Everything that touches, the walls, the mold goes into the walls, you got to tear the sheetrock. I mean, it gets disgusting. If we don't deal with the rubble in our lives, it will destroy everything in our lives. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the rubble in my life? What is wasting my time? What is wasting my energy? What keeps me from accomplishing my goals? What keeps me from accomplishing things that are important in my life? What stops me from doing the things that are right? What keeps me away? What discourages me that I have in my life? What rubble do I have in my life? You see, they were unable to finish the task as quickly as they originally planned because of the rubble. And what happened to them? They lost confidence in what they were doing. They lost part of their dream. They lost part of their future, their thought process. They began to focus on the rubble. What happened? Their confidence was lost. They lost heart. They lost enthusiasm. How come when you're in the middle of a project, is it not as fun as when you start it? It's like Skip, his favorite day is demo day. Demo day. This is a great day, demo day. Full of energy, full of enthusiasm. But we find ourselves that we lose heart, we lose enthusiasm. You see, we fall into failure. And when we fall into failure, what do we find ourselves doing? We find ourselves walking into self-pity. Poor me. We find ourselves into complaining. It's impossible. If we're dealing with somebody, we begin to blame others. They let me down. You see, I want to tell you this. If you don't succeed, you're a human. Have you ever succeeded? Have you ever succeeded in everything? No. Have you experienced failure? Yes. Just in case you don't know, I'm telling you, you have experienced failure, right? You're human. We start stuff and we experience failure. We've done math problems. I love the quadratic formula, and I love doing that. But if you don't do it exactly right, you experience failure at the end of that. Right? We experience failure. If you don't succeed, you're normal. We have to understand that. Sometimes we drive ourselves to such a point, we drive ourselves to, and our family and situations in our life that we want it perfect. Nothing in this life is perfect. Except my wife says that, maybe sometimes I am, but. No, nothing's perfect. Nothing. And sometimes we got such a drive that we want it this way. Listen to me. If you don't do it this way, your voice becomes so strong. Your opinion becomes so strong that you become repelling to those that you love. You see, what we need to learn is that failures are only temporary setbacks. Successful people will tell you this, they run into failures all the time, and that's where they learn. The school of hard knocks. I love that comment. The school of hard knocks. The school of barbed wire. Have you ever run into barbed wire? It's not a very great thing. But see, you see, successful people see the school of hard knocks. The successful people, as they walk into failures, as they walk into barbed wire, you know what they see it as? Only temporary setbacks. And then we find here that people were not wanting this wall to be done. What do we see? They didn't want this wall to be built. Their enemies did. We tore the wall down. We don't want you to rebuild this wall. A lot of people have spoke evilness into your life. They have evilness. That's not a new word. A lot of people have spoken evil into your life. They don't like you. And so what do they want you to do? They want you to fail. They don't want you to build this wall. They don't want you to be healthy. They don't want you to know Jesus. They don't want you to walk away from drugs. They don't want you to walk away from their friendship. What they want is they tore you down and they want you to stay there. There are people out there that are very evil, and you find yourself, they're coming against you. And so what do they want to do? They will create fear in your life. That's what happens in Nehemiah. People don't want you to succeed. They will create fear. What's the first thing that we see here? In verse 11, also our enemy said, before they know it or see us, we will be right there amongst them, and we will kill them and put an end to their work. I don't want you to have a healthy city. That's what they're saying. We don't want you to protect this city. We don't want you to build this wall, because then we can't come in and steal from you. We can't come in and do stuff. We can't come in and steal. We can't come in and kill. We have to go through the front gate, and you will stop us. So we don't want this. So what we want you to do is we want you to stay unhealthy. And if you stay unhealthy, then we can take and rob from you all we want. And many people find yourself, you find yourself very unhealthy because you have not built the walls around your life, because people keep tearing them down and you let them stay down. And Nehemiah said, we got to build the wall to protect the city. We need to build this wall. And as they're building this wall, the enemy said, I don't want you to build the wall. And if you build that wall, I'm going to come and I'm going to kill you. And it spreads fear. Oh yeah, if you do that, I'm going to tell this person you said this. You did that? Hey, you're going to get caught with drugs. You do that, they manipulate, they lie, they cheat. What do they do? They create fear. Notice verse 12. Then the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. That's what they do. 10 times over, I'm coming. I'm going to get you. I'm coming. I'm coming. You know, you were stupid when you were a kid. You're still stupid. Those thoughts in your mind, those thoughts, those things that you've heard, those destructive things that people have put into your life, they still say them today. Wicked people say wicked things. And the thing is that we think about them and we harbor them, and we find ourselves not building this wall, getting distracted about our future. God has a future for me to be successful. God has a future for me to be a great person. But my mind and people around me tell me no. I can't have it. I'm telling you this, God has a future for you. God has a future. No matter the situation, no matter the circumstance, God has a future for you. You say, but Pastor Russ, you don't understand what I've done. You don't understand who I am, all the troubles I made. You don't understand. I'm telling you this, God understands. God knows what you've done. He's walked with you. You say, but God can't forgive me. I'm telling you this, if you don't know God, you don't know what He can do. God has a plan for you and your future. God has a plan for you, and it's a good one. How many of you know people who have a plan for you that's not so good? You know? I'm telling you this today. As we look at our future, as we're making headway in our life, we must understand God has a plan for you. God has a plan for me, and it's a good one. I like good plans. You like good plans? I like good plans. see, we must understand as we look at this, wherever you turn, they will attack us. If you hang out with negative people, if you hang out with evil people, constantly listening to negative chatter, I'm telling you this, it will infect you. It will infect you. If you hang out with negative people and constantly listen to their negative chatter, I promise you this, it will infect you with fear. And fear will cause great discouragement in your life. So we must know what fear am I facing right now that is discouraging me. You see, I know when we face discouragement, especially when it's attached to fear, we want to run. We want to escape. We want to be let out. We want to be away from it. We must look at this. So I look at discouragement and I say, well, what do I do with discouragement? I have it coming at me. These people that want me to build the wall, they're saying negative things about me. I find myself discouraged because I'm tired and I'm only halfway done. I got all this rock to do. I got all this trash in my way. And I'm just looking at this. I'm going, what do I want to do? I want to run. So where are you going to run to? I don't know. I'm just going to run that way for a while. Right? We face so what do I do when I face all the discouragement? What do I do when I look at this? I like, oh man, I got this only halfway done. I got all this rubble. These people are going to kill me if I finish. This everything against me. What am I going to do? Well, let's take some steps of what Nehemiah did. We need to rest. We need to take deliberate time and rest. Rest our bodies, but rest our spirits in Jesus. We need to sit down and rest. Stop what's going around in your life driving you. Stop. Rest your body and rest your spirit. And the best way that I know how to do this is I stop and I pray. I pray. I begin to pray, and I'm telling you what, it begins to break things down in my life, especially a lot of times the trash that I have in my life, it's piled up against the wall and it's all in the way. And I begin to pray, and God says, well, let's deal with some of this trash. You're like, no. Let's go over here and look at these trees. They're so beautiful. But when you stop, slow down, you rest your body, and you rest your spirit, it is amazing what begins to happen. God, you got this in control. I have a pile of trash here. Let's talk about this. God begins to do miracles. God begins to help you and begins to remove discouragement, remove fear, and you begin to live on the promises. And the first one that comes to your mind is God says, I have a plan for you, a good future for you. And you begin to think about that instead of beginning to think about how some people just think you're, those thoughts of yuckiness. Don't think about that. What you think about is, God's with you. God's helping me. God has a great plan for me. God has a great plan for my life, for my marriage, for my children. Oh, now I start to begin to get excited again. Even though I have all this trash in my walls halfway built and people are telling me they're going to kill me. I begin to get excited because I know God has a plan for me. You can say, but my marriage has fallen apart. I have only certain times of the day or certain times of the month do I even get to see my children. Or because my job, I did this, now I'm fired, I don't have a job, and I'm almost homeless, or I'm in my car thinking, what? And I mean, everything's coming against my wall. I have so much stress in that wall and people, and it's stop. Learn to rest and learn to call upon the Lord. Begin to pray. Begin to think about the things that you know that are promises to you from God. Rest. In Psalms chapter 119, verse 73, it says, your hands, you made me and formed me. Give me understanding to learn your commands. You see, it's so important for us to know his commands and to place them in our life. In Psalms 127, verse 2, it says, God wants his loved ones to get a proper rest. You see, Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 13 says this, therefore I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the walls at the exposed places, posting them by families, with their swords, with their spears, and with their bows. You see what happened is Nehemiah began to make a plan. So I know we're going to build this wall. I have a dream of building this wall, and this future for this, the Jerusalem is going to be secure. It's going to happen. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin to make a plan. So what did he do? As people were threatening to come and kill, what does he do? He makes a plan. He makes a strategy. He didn't give up on their dream. Discouragement doesn't necessarily mean you're doing the wrong thing. Maybe you're doing it the wrong way. Discouragement doesn't mean that you're trying to do the right thing. Sometimes what we need to do is devise a new strategy. Our natural temptation is to give up. When we walk through discouragement, what's the greatest thing to do? Run. Do not give up on your future. Do not give up on your dream. We must focus on God. In verse 14, after looking things over, I stood up and I said to the nobles and the officials and the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. They can say all they want. They can say they're going to come and kill you, but I'm telling you this, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome. My little daughter, granddaughter, she goes, awesome. Who's Bom Bom? He's awesome. I like that. That's so fun. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome. When those fiery darts come your way, they're shielded away. Remember the Lord. Don't be afraid. You have a future. God's promised you a great future. He's going to help you dream. Even though we've walked through discouragements, even though we've made wrong choices, and because of this rumble of this trash and this situation in my life, I don't care. Remember who God is. Get excited about your life. Get excited about what you can do and where you're going to go, because it's going to be yummy. I like that. Fight discouragement. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome. And fight for your families. Look at this, the last part of this. And fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes. He said, do not be afraid of them. The Lord is with you, who is great and mighty. We must remember God's goodness to you in the past. We must remember God's closeness to you today. And we must remember the power of God for your future. You say, but Pastor Russ, I've messed things up in my life. I'm telling you this. Remember God who is powerful, almighty, and is with you, and is awesome. Remember that. Resist discouragement. Some of us like discouragement. Some of us, we like self-pity. Have you ever been around that person? Oh, it's so bad. No, have you ever been around that grumpy gills? I mean, it's so difficult when you're around somebody who's constantly discouraged. And what happens is it's infectious. It's worse than the COVID-19. It's infectious. So what do? What does he say to do? Fight. You fight against this. Fight against it. Don't give up. Fight. As Christians, we are engaged in a spiritual battle, a supernatural struggle, a supernatural combat. Satan is an accuser of you. He wants to rumble on and to show you your trash and your rumble. He wants you to stop. He would love to neutralize your effectiveness. He would love to get you so discouraged that you don't live a joyful life, that you can't talk about joy unspeakable and full of mercy, whatever the song goes. Joy! Joy! If you're discouraged, you're not going to talk about joy. He's going to shut your mouth. How does he do that? Through discouragement, lies, accusing. What do? You fight. You fight. In James chapter 4, verse 7, it says, resist the devil. Because the devil will tell you some negative things, some bad things about you that you know that are true. And so what do? Oh, I'm a bad person. I can't have this future. I can't have this great dream that God has for me because look at my past, at what I've done. I'm such a bad guy. And so we go into this self-pity. We don't fight. We say, no. I stand against this in the name of Jesus. I stand against this hatred. I stand against this discouragement in my life. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to thank God because he has a future for me. I'm going to walk into that future. It's going to be awesome. It's going to hand down to my kids. It's going to hand down to my grandkids. I'm telling you, God has a future for me, and there's nothing you can do or nothing you can say, devil. I know it's true. I'm going to hold it, and I'm going to walk in it. Woo! Way different. Yes, I am going to fight. I'm going to fight this discouragement. I'm going to fight this. You don't have to give in to discouragement. I'm going to ask the worship team to come up. Do not give in to discouragement. I'm telling you this. The thing about discouragement is this. It's your choice. You understand that? Discouragement is your choice. You choose that. It's your choice. If you're going to be discouraged about this, the situation, the circumstance I'm facing, it's your choice. You see, but Pastor Russ, I have such a hard time not being discouraged or not being depressed. I fight depression. I'm telling you, this is where it starts. All of this starts by knowing who Jesus is. That's where it all starts. It comes down to the basics. It all starts with Jesus.